But speaking of the country burning down, it seems like maybe this could be day one. We're gonna change things around. Have a listen.
So we will be sworn in tomorrow. I'll be representing you as your 47th President of the United States. And just in conclusion, together, we're going to cut your taxes, end inflation, slash your prices, getting them back down, raise your wages, and bring thousands of factories back to the USA, right where they belong. And that'll be done through tariffs and smart policy.
Is that all on day one? I wonder. That's going to be a busy day today. Joining us now to talk about it is our good friend of the show at the Brick Wall, Mike Koeniger. Good morning to you, Mike. Thanks for your time.
All right, Joe, I've got to be the voice of reason for just a moment. Allow me to be the voice of reason for just a moment.
Hey, you served in the Coast Guard. I'm sure it's reasonable.
It is not going to turn into the land of milk and prime rib. And yes, I said that for our good friend Jake. It's not going to turn into the land of milk and prime rib here. He's not going to be able to affect change like this in the first year or two. In fact, I'm going to remind folks, because I'm old, that Ronald Reagan, when he went into office in 1981, his first entire term was economic hardship because of the repercussions of the 4 years prior, or actually we could say the 12 years prior. And it wasn't until Ronald Reagan's second term that he was able to really affect a change in the economy. And we had a booming economy from 85 to 89, basically. And it carried on throughout the first part of the Bush administration. So there is just... Donald Trump is long on promise. I don't think he can change things quite that quickly. Now, can he open back up the oil pipelines in the first 100 days? Absolutely. Can he do some things with trade in the first 100 days? Yes. But it has to be everything he can do with executive orders. And contrary to popular belief and Joe Biden, you just can't declare things through executive orders.
Hold on. Let me push back now. Barack Obama, the executive order king of kings. I mean, that guy, he did so much through executive order. Joe Biden followed suit. And now Donald Trump has promised, and he reiterated this yesterday in his victory rally in D.C., today he's going to sign 200 executive orders. That's a massive amount. We're talking immigration, economy. We're talking DEI. He wants to get rid of DEI at the federal government and out of education itself. There has been some, I was reading Politico. Politico's no friend of Donald Trump. But even they were saying that he's got a lot of big plans today. But out of these plans, they're not certain that he's going to be able to pull it all off. He thinks they believe, Politico does, and I'll put links to this in the show notes, that he talks more than he's able to pull off. They don't think he has the support within his administration on day one to be able to truly do this, immigration being a big one. Mass deportations. What do you see there?
Well, this is where I push back. I think he can do those things on day one. These are policies that affect the executive branch of government, and the enforcement of immigration laws is an executive branch function. In fact, going back to my high school government teacher days, the executive branch enforces the laws. So any executive order that he can sign about enforcement of the laws is fully within his jurisdiction and power. So I'm not going to argue that too much. Secondly, I think Donald Trump 47 is much smarter than Donald Trump 45. He did not have the foresight to pick well when he was 45. And as far as who's in his cabinet, who the people are going to execute his executive orders, I think he's done a much better job. Let's say 65% of the time. I still see 35% of these folks are swamp creatures, so to speak. But he's done a better job of picking who's going to be on his cabinet this time. And these are people that are going to execute his plan. Say what you want about Hedgeseth. You and I had some reservations about him, not the same reservations the national media did, but differently. But Hedgeseth is going to get rid of some of the things that were huge issues within the military, and I believe is going to have a forward focus. This is Donald Trump's vision. Same thing with his Secretary of Transportation. Good traditional Catholic, by the way, with nine children, says he knows a little bit about transportation. I think he has some real ideas there. And so I am excited to that degree, but I am not in this land of milk and prime rib that all of MAGA Nation appears to be in, because we're in some tough straits. And as much as the Biden administration wants to tell us this is a great economy, I'm sorry, folks, it's not a great economy. You personally have seen your disposable income go to zero, correct?
Time. Big time, yes.
And it went to groceries. It went to groceries.
It did.
And as much as Trump wants to turn this around, and I believe he's sincere, I truly believe he's sincere, I don't see the prices going back down. They may stabilize.
No, I don't.
They're not going to go back down.
Going back to your point you said a minute ago about, if Donald Trump was just starting his first term and he had 8 years, 2 terms to go through, we would see big change. It took Barack Obama 2 terms to truly turn the Pentagon into the DEI dystopia of planet Earth. And it's going to take him more than 4 years to turn that around. Pete Hegseth can do all he can. You just don't swap out generals and all their staff overnight. That's not a thing. It's bad enough. I mean, one of the good pieces of news is it looks like Donald Trump is going to reverse all of these discharges of men and women who served our country but didn't want to get the jab. He's going to bring them back to rehabilitate their records so that they can retire, get their benefits, et cetera, which is good. Praise be to God. But again, these things aren't going to just turn the ship around overnight. It takes a long time to do that. 4 years may not be enough to honestly do that. Okay, let me throw this log on the fire. What about foreign wars? He said in his campaign, Mike, that he's going to end the war in Ukraine. He's going to end the war in the Middle East. The ceasefire went off last night. Hostages are beginning to be released. This is hopefully a good thing in Israel. What about Russia, Ukraine? I think it's going to take them a lot longer than just a day or two to end that. I don't think those two guys are going to want to come to an agreement anytime within the next couple of months.
All right, you push back on me, Joe. No, I get to push back on you. Remember, there was a peace agreement, and the prior administration, the Biden administration, whoever ran the Biden administration, put the kibosh on that peace agreement. And actually, I've been listening to Scott Horton recently. This peace agreement has been in place since the beginning of this war in Ukraine. And so you and I, Boris Johnson basically was our agent and said, nope, over, done. So this perhaps is something that can happen in the first 100 days if Putin and Zelensky are still willing to come to the table and sign this agreement. So I think that is probably attainable. What is more concerning to me are all the wars you and I don't know about. We know there are American troops in Northern Africa. We know there are American troops scattered throughout the Middle East. We know there are American troops in all kinds of places that we don't even know how to say the names of these nations. And so if Donald Trump is sincere, will we be going back into a more defensive stance, or as prior President W. Bush said, a humble foreign policy? And that's truly, I think, what we as Catholics really need to pray for, is a humble foreign policy where we are the shining beacon on the hill and we stop being the world's policeman to this degree. It has to be moderated some. So, Joe, I am very concerned. You know, we destabilized Syria. Today, Syrian Christians are being killed and oppressed severely in Syria. Yeah. And this is the fruit of Obama/Biden, what's going on in Syria. This is theirs. They own it. And so, Joe, I'm much more hopeful on this front. Now, you heard me start pessimistic. Hopefully, I'm getting to end optimistic. Donald Trump does have a 4-year history of not starting new wars. And so let's hope and pray that continues. And if indeed it does, and this is the one accomplishment of his presidency, along with maybe a North Korea, South Korea peace deal, which was on the table, ready to be signed, and his own administration scuttled it. And we know this from Time Magazine's reporting, where insiders anonymously talked about how proud they were that they destroyed this peace deal in Korea. If he can pull these two things off, along with a less aggressive foreign policy, Joe, this will be a decent presidency. It's not going to be the land of milk and prime rib, but it will be a good presidency. And I am hopeful for that. And I'm very thrilled to hear that our brothers and sisters in arms who were unlawfully discharged from the military may get some recompense in that regard, and that's a huge positive. And, you know, I got to say, Hegseth focused on nothing but DEI. The problems in the military are much, much deeper than DEI. Yeah. We're talking about a leadership chain that has essentially become incredibly political, and that's never been the part that the military should be taking. The colonels and the naval captains of the military are probably just as much a problem as the admirals and generals are, and I find that incredibly
That's my point. Well, I would push back even further than that. It goes back to the midshipmen and the cadets at the academies. I mean, they're being indoctrinated now at the earliest possible level. And, you know, you can go to college and get a 4-year degree at any university you want, but you're likely not to be a major general unless you've been to the academy. And so the academy is really the seminaries, the breeding ground of future leadership. And when you're training them there, as the U.S. Air Force Academy has now for many years trained them to believe that Christianity is just one of many religions equal to that of Wicca, then you've got massive problems. If you can't see truth for a person, the one and only way to salvation, to God the Father, then you are incapable of seeing the world around you in its true reality. You're just not up for the task. So I argue that our leadership virus in the American military is so bad that it's our greatest weakness from our foreign allies, and they know this and they take advantage of it. Why do you think Vladimir Putin loves to campaign in our headlines in here in the West about how conservative he is, how Christian he is, how everything opposite of what we are? They know our weakness and they're exploiting it, which is why TikTok, owned by the CCP, still gets to manipulate minds of millions and millions of young Americans. And Donald Trump just handed it back to them on a silver platter last night.
All right, I'm going to jump up on this soapbox with you, Joe. So you're going to have to scooch over here.
You got
you got to scooch over. We have to pray that the senior NCOs and the senior most chiefs of the naval services are able to mold these young men and women who come out of the academies and are able to push them to the right. It has always been the case that the enlisted ranks or the conservatives and the officer ranks are a bit more liberal, and maybe in this point, and I've been gone for a long time, Joe, maybe incredibly more liberal. So let's hope that influence of those senior NCOs can make a difference. Joe, we need to pray for President Trump. We need to pray for his conversion. We need to pray for him to have wisdom, and we need to pray that he has the people around him. And we need to pray for Joe Biden that he may be reconciled with Holy Mother Church and come back to his faith of his youth. God bless you, Joe.
Well said. Well said. The glass half full guy, apparently, Mike Koeniger, Mr. Optimist there. Thanks for your time today and your insight. We'll be tracking what's going on the inauguration today, especially as we get into our after show. But more on that still to come. Did you like that video? It's okay. You can admit it. It's perfectly fine. Hey, we cover the big stories of our day, from inside the church to outside the church to all points in between, and we do it from a Catholic perspective. It's called A Catholic Take. It's a radio program Monday through Friday. We live stream it right here on this channel, by the way, so make sure to subscribe, like, and share. We would be very grateful to you. And don't forget, you're going to want to watch this video right here because you don't want to miss anything.